back again.
Hi.
All right, so now we're going to talk about when life happens. In other words, things don't go according to plan, and this baby that you conceived and had these visions of this wonderful, natural, full-term birth, holding your baby straight after birth just didn't happen. And you either have a baby that's sick and whisked off to the neonatal ICU and you hardly got to see your baby, or you have a baby that was born prematurely and you kind of got a little glimpse and then they whisked the baby off into the neonatal ICU. What impact and reality does that have on both the mom and the baby and even the dad when that happens?
Yeah, and I think what you're saying, Kath, is so important, because I think even parents with full-term babies have an enormous transition to make from being just an adult to being a parent with the baby to look after. Enormous. And even those parents have an imagined idea of the baby. And even a full-term baby is different in reality to what they might have imagined. So for parents that have preterm babies, the shift is even greater. It's the sort of unexpected has happened, and they had an idea and an imagination of what was going to be like to have this baby. And so there's an element of trauma around it as well. And so the transition to actually really taking on board what the reality is huge. And so these parents have a lot, there's just enormous transformation to make, to be able to see this tiny little being as the baby. It's so far from what they expected. So, I think parents really need to give themselves time to manage that huge transition and almost accept the loss of the baby that they'd hoped for, which is it happens to all parents, but it's just extreme for these tiny little preemie babies. But despite that, these little preemie babies are still arrived, primed to connect, primed for attachment. And so I think it's often a big challenge for parents to sort of still, hold the baby in mind, what as a little person, still needing all those things. So it takes a lot for parents to manage their own trauma and anxieties and fears, to be able to almost step into this new relationship with this very fragile, often really in danger little being. And, I often feel it might be helpful to really try to see how the baby would be experiencing this. And I think in the past there was a little bit of an idea of that it's too emotionally difficult for parents to really step in and really want to bond because this baby is so fragile. But we know that children need that loving, nurturing support from a parent as best they can while they're in the NICU. And preemie babies who don't get enough of that often don't have such good emotional regulation later on. So as parents, it's really, to almost try and for parents to manage their own emotions, to be able to regulate their own emotions in this time of trauma, to try and be fully present for these little beings so that they can pick up on those attachment cues and kind of almost see the capacity of this baby to form a relationship, to see the baby as a little individual, despite, the individual is a little person rather than a sick baby or this with this fundamental need to attach to the primary caregiver.
I like that. That's really special. But now it brings us to a very hard topic, and that is the reality of this time that we're in. We're in July, and we've been in lockdown for the past 120 plus days, and there's a world pandemic going on, and around the world there are parents with babies in neonatal ICU units who have to experience that, like we've just discussed now, but also the reality that they are further dealing with this pandemic, and in a lot of cases, and I would say 90% of cases, are being restricted from visitation in some cases, in some units, and I've been doing quite a lot of research, there's no visitation allowed at all. There's units where there's limited visitation, and there's majority of units are not allowing dads to visit. And the reason being is that they're really trying to control numbers, trying to manage the spread, protect the staff, because should the staff all come down with the virus, obviously they'd have to close the unit, which has implications of where do the babies go. So trying to protect that, even though children are not as vulnerable, we do know that, moving babies who are very sick and prem babies to other units in other parts of the country, and that is not a good idea and a logistical challenge, never mind more a logistical nightmare. So there are very sound reasons why these restrictions have been put in place. So that's not the debate here, but the challenge is, how do we now deal with that as parents? If you have a prem baby in the unit, you're restricted to possibly visiting a few hours, maybe only 3 days or 4 days a week. What can you speak to around that?
And I think I'm very optimistic, and the kind of the good story is that babies up to the age of 2, the kind of neuroplasticity and the potential for different neural networks to grow is the most in any stage of our life. So babies are enormously resilient, and that work done by Alan Shaw, who's done a lot of attachment work, he kind of built on Bowlby's attachment work and has done more modern attachment work. His research has shown that children can be securely attached. A secure attachment is possible even if the parent is only attuned to the baby 30% of the time. So he coined this idea, this phrase of the good enough mother, that you don't have to be perfect. And so there's this enormous sort of range of possibilities. So, I mean, especially in these cases where obviously it's not optimum that mums aren't allowed to be with their babies. But that's what it is, and we're not going to be able to change that right now. So the opportunities that these mums do have to really utilize them fully, and all the research has shown that even preemie babies recognize faces, recognize smells, recognize voices, and they remember. They have the capacity to remember. So a good few hours where mum is soothing, talking, getting to know the baby is held in memory. And if and babies learn very quickly about kind of routine and the expectation that it's going to happen again. And that can see the baby through the times when they're not with mum. So, it's not the ideal situation, but it is how it is. And I think for mums not to underestimate the value and the learning and the attunement and the relationship development that can happen within that time frame.
I like that, because I think, again, it comes to, let's focus on what time you have in a positive way versus the time you don't have. Because like you said, that's really, it's not, I didn't know that research, and I think that's so encouraging and so exciting. I've heard the term the good enough mother, and I've used it a few times when dealing with different patients in different situations, and even myself sometimes saying, okay, I'm good enough today. I haven't had a great day, but I'm good enough. And so I love that in the context of what we're going through at the moment, that moms can take hold of that term and just say, I'm good enough, and it's good enough then for my baby.
And I think also what's really important is these babies have memories. And, the way we manage, even as adults, through hard times, is we hold something in mind that keeps us going and gets us through. So if the baby has a good couple of hours with mum, that is in the baby's memory bank. And if the baby is going through a period where it feels lonely or anxious, it can draw on that and know that it's going to happen again. And so this line of learning and repetition and can be a huge, immense, kind of huge well of a resource for this little baby to draw on. Because the baby will also store that in a kind of physiological way. In that moment where mum was there holding me or talking to me, the baby will feel calm. It will be emitting all the feel-good hormones and neurotransmitters, and will connect that with mum. And then it comes back again. 2 or 3 days, mum's back, and I get that feeling again. So lovely. I think the idea that there's memory and it can really be a resource for this little person.
Oh, I love that. I think that's something moms can really hold on to is my baby is going to remember these 4 hours that I had today. And I think that is just that makes those 4 hours count so much. That it's not just about that moment, but it's about moments when the baby's going to need to tap in. And I love that when you said, and I've done that, we've all done that, you remember a smell or a feeling or something, and it just gets you through a more difficult time. And I think that's very special, because that's something only a mom can give her baby at that stage, and they're able to do that, which is wonderful.
I think also it's about learning that relationship with that particular baby, and obviously with prem babies, the cues they give out, because of their neurological systems are so immature, the cues they give out to mums are often not so easy to read as a term baby. So these parents need to become expert researchers at learning this little preemie's way of asking to connect. So the time, those 4 hours they have every third day or second day, can really be this moment of exploration and research and learning about this little person and what signals it is trying to give to connect.
Oh, that's lovely. Okay, so then the last part of our chat, I'm going to just give us a break now, and then the last part we're going to talk about the mom's own mental and physical health, and specifically her mental health, and just how we can support her and what she can do in her environment to support her, and what her partner can do. So we'll be back in a minute. Thanks, Kate.